Okay, so recently I put out my 120 plus hour review for the Retroid Pocket 3 Plus. What that means is I basically gamed on the device for 120 hours before putting out the review. This is so that I can get you the best review possible. One thing though that occurred to me on that review is that I never really tested PS2 out. I know a lot of you out there are PlayStation 2 fans, so I just had to make a video testing PlayStation 2 out on the Retroid Pocket 3 Plus. And honestly, if you own this device, you really do need to take it to its limits because it can handle a lot. Now, there are a lot of videos out there that show a ton of footage of PlayStation 2 on the Retroid Pocket 3 Plus. There's also this spreadsheet out there created by the Reddit community for Retroid Pocket 3 that has pretty much descriptions of how every single PlayStation 2 game plays on the Retroid Pocket 3 Plus and what settings you need to tinker with so that you can get optimal performance. I'll make sure to link to that spreadsheet in the description below. Because the PS2 game tests are already out there, I didn't want to add to the noise by creating a video with another 50 or so PS2 games tested on the Retroid Pocket 3 Plus. Honestly, if there's a specific game that you're looking at, just go to the spreadsheet. It's very accurate. Pretty much nobody on YouTube is creating videos on like one PlayStation 2 game that they play from start to finish for the entire game. Most videos are taking about 10-minute clips from like the start of the game just to give you an idea of how it performs, which is fine because honestly you could pretty much get a gauge for how the game is going to perform based on the first 10 minutes of it. But here's the thing, I wanted to see how a game will perform that's listed as playable all the ways through. Because I don't know about you, but I would hate to start playing a game and then get most of the way through and then find out that it crashes or is unplayable at one particular part of the game. That would ruin the experience, right? Plus honestly, I thought it'd be fun to play an entire PlayStation 2 game on the Retroid Pocket 3 Plus. Is it an enjoyable experience, or is it just better to just buy a PS2 and the games on it and play it the original way? Let's find out in this video. So without further ado, we're gonna play one great PlayStation 2 game all the way through, and that game is gonna be none other than one of my favorites, SSX3. Let's get into the video. Let's briefly talk about the setup I used to play PS2 games on my Retroid Pocket 3 Plus. I used the Aether SX2 emulator. Now I apologize if I butchered that pronunciation, I'm pretty bad with pronunciations. When you set up your Retroid Pocket 3 Plus, you'll be given the option to pre-download this emulator on your Retroid Pocket 3 Plus. You can do that, it works totally fine, but if I were you, I would make sure to download the most up-to-date version of Aether SX2. Which brings me to the common inquiry. Should I use Aether SX2 emulator that you can find on the Google Play Store, or should you download it directly from the Aether SX2 website? Personally, I just went with the Play Store version because this is the simplest option and it works fine. That being said, the PlayStation version does have ads. Some people online argue that this may slow down the emulation. For me, it's been working just fine, so I didn't really care. The ads only appear on the emulator's menu, not during actual gameplay. Now, when I play SSX3, I'm going to be playing on the handheld itself, and I'm also going to be hooking it up to a TV or monitor and playing with my PS5 controller. Luckily, the Aether SX2 emulator lets you save controller configurations. Otherwise, it would have been super annoying having to remap the controls every time I wanted to switch from the controller to the actual handheld. One slightly annoying thing is that you can't access the settings on Aether SX2 without using the touchscreen, so when you switch to different controls, you'll need to navigate that on the physical console. By the way, just in case you're curious, here are the settings I use on Aether SX2 in order to get optimal gameplay smoothness. Alright, now that we got the setup out of the way, let's talk about the PS2 gameplay. You may be wondering, why did I choose to play through SSX3 as opposed to any other PS2 game out there? Well, honestly, it had a lot to do with nostalgia. I grew up playing SSX3 and simply loved it. I haven't played the game in about 15 years or so, so it was time to play it again. Most people argue that SSX Tricky is the best in the franchise, and they're probably right, but honestly, the Conquer the Mountain mode in SSX3 is so much fun that I had to play this over SSX Tricky. Also, SSX3 received a great unplayability according to the Retroid Pocket 3 Plus playability chart, so I figured it'd be a good game to test all the way through. Does it actually play great? Does it actually play great throughout the entire game? Let's find out. Right off the bat, I was shocked by how smooth the gameplay was. This tiny $150 handheld could play pretty demanding PS2 game with no problem. I was also getting 60 frames per second, smooth as butter gameplay most of the time. And now, emphasis on most of the time. Occasionally, you'd get some frame drops. It would be in areas with a lot of activities, such as like avalanches during your snowboarding. Also, I seem to get more frame drops while playing on a screen, like on my monitor here. I haven't done any actual tests on this theory. Could be totally anecdotal, but I'm pretty confident that's the case. By the way, I can't stress how nice it is to connect my Retroid Pocket 3 Plus to a TV and then connect my AirPods to it so I can play without anyone even knowing I'm on, like late at night. If I was to pinpoint where I get the most frame drops, it's probably during the peak long races in Conquer the Mountain when I'm ending with Metro City. However, at no point would I call the game unplayable, more like slightly annoying. Anyway, I had a blast reliving my childhood by playing an entire campaign of SSX3 using Mac. Honestly, if you haven't played SSX3, I highly recommend you do. This is just one of those games that you can put hours and hours of mindless fun without even realizing it. It controls great, the tricks are super addictive to pull off, and the amount of customizables and missions they put throughout the campaign could easily have you putting in like 20, 30, or even 40 hours. Great game, highly recommend downloading it for your Retroid Pocket 3 Plus. What about battery life? Is running PS2 emulation on the Retroid Pocket 3 Plus going to completely kill the battery life so fast that it's not even enjoyable? Well, here's the thing. You'll notice the battery life deplete faster than if you were to play something like Game Boy Advance, NES, or SNES. But honestly, I still find the battery lasting me a satisfactory amount of time. I can play SSX3 for like 3 hours, sometimes even 4 hours, which is plenty for me in one game setting. Maybe you aren't an SSX3 fan, and no worries, I tested out a few other games. Unlike SSX3 though, I only play these games briefly just to get a feel for the performance. I wanted to talk briefly about the experience of playing PS2 games on the Retroid Pocket 3 Plus. Specifically, is it comfortable? Because with a lot of retro handhelds, when you play games that rely a lot on the triggers, the experience can make your hands feel like they're cramping up. This is not the case with the Retroid Pocket 3 Plus. I found that playing PS2 on this device feels right at home. Something to do with the ergonomics of it. Makes me feel like I'm holding a PS2 controller. I still think that your best experience playing PS2 will come from the real deal, but when you add the convenience of having a handheld that can play portably and create save states, it's hard to say which is ultimately the better experience. For me, the screen size also works great for PS2 games. Ideally, you wouldn't want anything smaller just because of the nature of 3D games. Overall, playing SSX3 on the handheld felt great, but as I mentioned earlier, I'll still connect it occasionally to a monitor or TV and use the PlayStation controller just to get a little bit more of an original feel. Glad though that I have the option on the Retroid Pocket 3 Plus. Alrighty, so based on the compatibility spreadsheet that I linked in the description, plus the PS2 games I played on the Retroid Pocket 3 Plus, plus the entire SSX3 PS2 game I played on it, I can confidently say that the PS2 experience on the Retroid Pocket 3 Plus is great. And honestly, for the fact that it's less than $150 is even better. Now, not every PS2 game is going to play as well as SSX3 does on the Retroid Pocket 3 Plus. If you have a list of PS2 games that you want to play on the device, before you buy it, I highly recommend you check out that compatibility list. Again, it's very accurate. It's going to tell you whether the game is playable or not. Anyway, thanks for watching. I really appreciate it. I highly recommend you check out our review video on the Retroid Pocket 3 Plus. I put in like 120 hours of gaming on the device. So if you're thinking about buying it, check out the review video. Anyway, that's it for the video. Have a good one. Have a good one.